Chapter 1. A Deal in the Shadows. The planet Zykar, 7 sat on the edge of explored space, a chaotic hub where laws bent to the will of those with power and credits spoke louder than morals. Its sprawling city, Erixis Prime, was a study in extreme soaring glass towers overshadowed cramped alleys, and neon lights reflected off rain-soaked streets teeming with all manner of life. Merchants hawked wares ranging from exotic spices to bioengineered weapons, while shadowy figures brokered deals in the dark corners of bustling taverns. It was here that Captain Elias Gray, a seasoned human mercenary, found himself navigating the labyrinthine marketplace. Tall, broad-shouldered, and perpetually dressed in his reinforced combat jacket, Elias had carved out a reputation as someone who could get things done, no questions asked. His latest mission had taken him deep into pirate territory to retrieve a shipment of Hrillium ore, a mineral so rare and valuable that it was said to power entire fleets. But now, as he stepped into the dimly lit backroom of the Golden Spire Tavern, he realized the payment he had been promised might not materialize as planned. The offer. Captain Gray, croaked Trellix, the dealer who had hired him. Trellix's amphibian-like features glistened under the flickering overhead lights, his bulbous yellow eyes scanning Elias warily. A pleasure to see you again. I trust the mission was successful? Elias dropped a small hollow drive onto the table between them. The device projected a shimmering image of a crate marked with the distinctive green glow of Hrillium ore. Delivered as promised, Elias said flatly. Now, about my payment. Trellix shifted uncomfortably, his webbed hands fidgeting. Ah yes, about that. You see, Captain, there's been an unforeseen complication. My accounts are temporarily frozen due to certain political matters. Elias's green eyes narrowed. Political matters? That wasn't part of the deal, Trellix. Indeed, it wasn't, Trellix said quickly, his tone placating. But I assure you, I have a solution. A substitute that's worth far more than credits. Elias crossed his arms, unimpressed. What kind of substitute? Trellix clapped his hands, and the door at the back of the room slid open with a low hiss. From the shadows emerged a figure, her movements hesitant but fluid. She was tall, her frame wrapped in flowing, silken garments that shimmered like liquid silver. Her lavender skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her silver hair fell in waves around her shoulders. A metallic collar encircled her neck, its intricate designs hinting at its purpose. This is Liara, Trellix said, gesturing grandly. An Ilorian, one of the rarest species in the galaxy. Her kind is highly sought after for their beauty, intellect, and other talents. Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask to know what Trellix meant by other talents. The collar around her neck marked her as a slave, and the very sight of it churned his stomach. I'm not a trafficker, Elias said coldly. Of course not, Trellix said smoothly. But think of her as an investment. Ilorians are worth their weight in Hrillium, and she's no exception. Take her, Captain. She'll fetch a fortune if you decide to sell her. Keep her, if you prefer. Liara's violet eyes met Elias's for a brief moment, and in that fleeting gaze, he saw something unexpected, defiance. She was no broken soul resigned to her fate. There was a spark of intelligence, a quiet strength that belied her outwardly submissive posture. Elias hesitated, torn between his disdain for slavery and the practical need to close this deal. Finally, he nodded. I'll take her, but this clears your debt, Trellix. Of course, Trellix said with a wide grin. A pleasure doing business with you. A new passenger. The journey back to Elias's ship, the Corsair, was tense. Liara followed silently, her steps light and graceful despite the heavy air between them. The bustling crowds of Erixis Prime parted for them, their attention drawn to Liara's otherworldly presence. Ilorians were rare enough to be considered myths in some parts of the galaxy, and her appearance stirred murmurs among the onlookers. Once aboard the Corsair, Elias led her to a small cabin near the cargo bay. The room was bare but clean, with a single cot and a small table bolted to the floor. This is where you'll stay, he said gruffly, avoiding her gaze. I don't know what Trellix told you, but you're not my servant. You're free to move around the ship, but don't touch anything critical. Liara tilted her head, studying him. You're different from the others, she said, her voice soft but tinged with curiosity. Elias frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Most who take an Elorian slave look at us like objects, she said, her violet eyes meeting his. You don't. Elias sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. I didn't take you. You were payment for a job, and I don't deal in slavery. Once we're out of this sector, I'll drop you off somewhere safe. Liara's expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. And if I told you that leaving me somewhere safe won't solve my problem? Elias hesitated. What problem? Before she could answer, the ship's proximity alarms blared. Elias's hand went to his sidearm instinctively. Stay here, he ordered, darting toward the cockpit. An unexpected threat. Elias slid into the pilot's seat, his eyes scanning the controls. The sensors showed a ship on an intercept course, sleek, black, and bristling with weaponry. It was a hunter-killer class, a type used by bounty hunters and slavers. Great, Elias muttered under his breath. He activated the comms. Unidentified vessel, state your business. A gruff voice crackled through the speakers. You've got something that doesn't belong to you, human. Hand over the Elorian, and we'll let you go. Elias's jaw tightened. Sorry, I don't negotiate with slavers. The other ship opened fire, plasma bolts streaking past the Corsair's hull. Elias cursed and threw the ship into a sharp dive, evading the attack. Alarms blared as he pushed the engines to their limit, darting between the jagged asteroid field that surrounded Zykar 7. Liara appeared in the doorway of the cockpit, her expression calm despite the chaos. They're not going to stop, she said. I noticed, Elias snapped, his hands flying over the controls. Care to explain why they're after you? Liara hesitated, then stepped closer. Because I'm not just an Elorian slave. I'm Princess Liara of House Alarith, heir to the Elorian throne. Elias froze, his mind racing. Your royalty? Yes, she said, her voice steady. And if we don't get out of here, they'll make sure neither of us lives to tell anyone. Elias gritted his teeth. Hold on, princess. This is going to get bumpy. He activated the ship's countermeasures, releasing a cloud of chaff that disrupted the pursuing ship's targeting systems. The Corsair banked hard, slipping through the asteroid field as plasma bolts streaked harmlessly past. A dangerous revelation. Once the Corsair was clear of the danger, Elias turned to Liara, his expression a mixture of disbelief and frustration. You could have mentioned the whole princess thing earlier. Liara met his gaze calmly. Would it have changed your decision? Elias sighed, slumping into his seat. Probably not. But now we've got bounty hunters after us, and I'm guessing there's more to this story than you're telling me. Liara nodded, her violet eyes serious. There is. But if you want the truth, you'll have to trust me. Elias stared at her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. All right, princess. Let's hear it. Chapter 2. Secrets Among the Stars. The Corsair drifted through the vastness of space, its engines humming quietly as it moved beyond the asteroid belt surrounding Zykar 7. The adrenaline from the pursuit had begun to fade, leaving Elias and Liara in a charged silence. The cockpit was dimly lit, the stars outside casting a faint glow over their faces. Elias's mind churned with questions, but he forced himself to take a steadying breath. All right, princess, Elias said, breaking the silence. You've got the floor. Who exactly are you, and why are people willing to risk their lives to hunt you down? Liara, seated across from him, clasped her hands in her lap. Her demeanor was calm, but her eyes held a storm of emotions. As I said before, my name is Liara Alarith, heir to the Elorian throne. But what I didn't tell you is that my family was betrayed. Elias raised an eyebrow. Betrayed? By who? My uncle, she said, her voice tightening. Lord Varric, a member of our ruling council. Elorian society is governed by a balance of power between the royal family and the council, but Varric wanted more. He orchestrated a coup, using mercenaries and bribed officials to seize control. Elias leaned back in his chair, absorbing the information. So, he overthrew your family and sold you off as a slave? Liara nodded, her gaze distant. I was taken during the attack. My parents were killed, and my younger brother Dash, her voice faltered, and she swallowed hard. I don't know if he survived. Elias's jaw tightened. He wasn't a stranger to betrayal and loss, but hearing Liara's story struck a nerve. So Varric's ruling your people now? Yes, Liara said bitterly. And he's using my supposed death to solidify his claim. The bounty hunters you saw? They're part of his network. He knows that if word gets out that I'm alive, his position will be jeopardized. Elias rubbed his temples, letting out a low whistle. And now I've got a bullseye on my back, because I took you off Trellix's hands. Liara's gaze softened. I'm sorry, Captain. I didn't ask for this, and I don't want to drag you into my problems. If you want to drop me off at the nearest safe planet, I'll go. Elias stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. It's not that simple. If I let you go, you'll be dead before you hit the ground. Besides, he sighed. I don't like bullies. If this Varric guy thinks he can get away with throwing you in chains, someone needs to prove him wrong. A dangerous plan. Liara studied Elias, her expression a mixture of gratitude and surprise. You're serious? Elias nodded. But if we're going to take this guy down, we need a plan, and I'm guessing you've got more to offer than just your name. Liara's lips quirked in a faint smile. I was trained in diplomacy, strategy, and advanced technology. My people may value elegance, but we know how to fight when necessary. Good, Elias said, because we're going to need every advantage we can get. He activated the Corsair's holoprojector, displaying a map of the surrounding star systems. First, we need to find allies. If we go in alone, Varric's forces will crush us. Do you know anyone who's still loyal to your family? Liara's expression grew thoughtful. There's a resistance movement, but they've gone underground. If we can get to Valthor's Haven, a remote outpost on the edge of Elorian space, we might find them. Elias studied the map, his finger tracing a route. It's a long shot, but it's our best option. We'll need to avoid major trade routes to keep off Varric's radar. Liara nodded. And we'll need supplies, food, fuel, and weapons. Elias smirked. That's the easy part. The hard part is staying alive long enough to use them. Enemies in pursuit. The journey to Valthor's Haven was anything but smooth. As soon as they entered Elorian-controlled space, the Corsair's sensors picked up multiple ships on an intercept course. Liara recognized the sleek, silver designs instantly. Those are Elorian enforcers, she said, her voice tense. Varric's elite forces. Of course they are, Elias muttered, gripping the controls. Hang on. The Corsair banked sharply, diving into a nearby nebula to shake their pursuers. The ship's shields flared as plasma bolts streaked past, lighting up the cockpit in bursts of blue and gold. Liara's hands flew over the auxiliary console, activating the Corsair's countermeasures. Deploying interference field, she said. It'll disrupt their targeting systems, but only for a few seconds. Good enough, Elias said, punching the engines. The ship shot forward, disappearing into the swirling gases of the nebula. For several tense minutes, they navigated the treacherous terrain, evading their pursuers through a combination of skill and luck. Finally, the sensors showed the enforcers breaking off their pursuit. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was too close. Liara nodded, her hands trembling slightly. They'll keep coming. Varric won't stop until I'm captured or dead. Elias met her gaze, his expression resolute. Then we'll make sure that doesn't happen. The Haven. When they arrived at Valthor's Haven, the outpost was a stark contrast to the bustling chaos of Zykar 7. Hidden within the craggy terrain of an uncharted moon, it was little more than a collection of fortified domes and underground bunkers. Yet it pulsed with life. Rebels, smugglers, and freedom fighters from across the galaxy moved with purpose, their determination palpable. Liara was greeted with shock and reverence by the resistance leaders, who had assumed she was dead. Among them was Commander Saren, a grizzled Elorian veteran who had served her father. Princess Liara, Saren said, bowing deeply. Your return is a beacon of hope for our people. Liara's voice was steady but humble. The credit belongs to Captain Gray. Without him, I wouldn't be here. Saren turned to Elias, his expression appraising. A human? I didn't think your kind meddled in Elorian politics. I'm not here for politics, Elias said bluntly. I'm here to take down Varric, and I could use your help. Saren smiled faintly. Then you'll have it. But be warned, Captain, the road ahead will be perilous. Wouldn't expect anything less, Elias replied. A shared purpose. As preparations for the rebellion began, Elias and Liara found themselves working side by side. Their initial wariness had given way to a growing respect, and in quiet moments, they even managed to share a laugh or two. "You're not what I expected, Captain," Liara admitted one evening as they reviewed tactical plans. "Good or bad?" Elias asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Liara's expression softened. "Good. You remind me that not all battles are fought with swords or crowns." Elias chuckled. "And you remind me that sometimes the fight's worth it." Their shared determination forged a bond stronger than either of them had anticipated, setting the stage for the battles to come. Chapter 3. The Rebellion Rises. The hidden stronghold of Valthur's Haven buzzed with a renewed energy. Commander Saren, the grizzled Elorian veteran, had wasted no time rallying the scattered remnants of the resistance. Fighters prepared for battle, technicians worked tirelessly to arm the fleet, and strategists pored over maps of Elorian space, plotting the rebellion's next move. At the center of it all stood Liara and Elias, an unlikely pair who had become the face of the resistance. She, the last rightful heir to the Elorian throne, and he, the human mercenary who had refused to abandon her. A bold plan. In the war room, a holomap of Elorian Prime, the Empire's capital planet, glowed with intricate details of its defense systems. The resistance leaders stood around it, their faces tense as they debated their next move. "The capital is too well defended," one strategist said, shaking his head. "A direct assault would be suicide." "We're not suggesting a frontal attack," Saren replied, his deep voice calm but firm. "We need to disrupt Varric's power at its core, cut off his resources, and expose his lies. If we can turn the Council and the people against him, he won't have the support to maintain his rule." Liara stepped forward, her voice steady. "There's a communications hub in Velarin Spire, one of the orbital stations above Elorian Prime. It's the central node for all state-controlled broadcasts. If we can take it, we can send a message to the entire Empire." Elias frowned, leaning over the holomap. "Let me guess it's heavily guarded." "Extremely," Saren said. "But we have an advantage. The Resistance has an agent on the inside reign, one of our best operatives. She's been feeding us intel on the hub's security protocols." Elias straightened, his jaw set. "All right, what's the plan?" The team assembles. The mission to infiltrate Velarin Spire required a small, specialized team. Elias and Liara would lead the operation, accompanied by Saren and a handful of resistance fighters. Rain would coordinate from inside the hub, providing crucial intel to bypass the security systems. As they prepared for the mission, Elias found Liara in the armory, inspecting a sleek plasma rifle. She looked up as he entered, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Ready to storm an orbital station?" she asked, her tone light despite the weight of their task. Elias smirked, checking the charge on his sidearm. "Always. What about you, Princess? This isn't exactly a diplomatic negotiation." Liara's smile faded, replaced by determination. "I've spent too long running and hiding. It's time I fought for what's mine." Elias nodded, his respect for her growing. "Then let's make sure we win." The infiltration. The team departed aboard the Corsair, its stealth systems engaged as it approached Velarin Spire. The station loomed ahead, a massive structure of gleaming metal and crystalline spires, its surface bristling with turrets and patrol ships. Inside the Corsair, tension hung thick in the air as the team went over the plan one final time. Rain's voice crackled through the comms. "You'll dock at Maintenance Bay 12. Security is light there, but once you're inside, it gets tricky. I'll guide you through the lower levels to the control room." Elias glanced at Liara. "You good?" She nodded, gripping her rifle tightly. "Let's do this." The docking sequence went smoothly, and the team slipped into the station undetected. The maintenance bay was dimly lit, its corridors lined with pipes and conduits. Rain's voice guided them through the labyrinthine passageways, her instructions precise. "Take the left corridor," she said. "There's a patrol coming up on your right." The team moved swiftly and silently, avoiding detection as they made their way deeper into the station. But as they reached the upper levels, the alarms suddenly blared. "They've spotted you," Rain said urgently. "Get to the control room now." The control room. The team broke into a sprint, plasma bolts sizzling past them as Varric's enforcers closed in. Saren covered their rear, his massive frame and heavy weaponry providing a formidable defense. Elias and Liara led the charge, bursting into the control room and securing the entrance. The room was a hive of activity, its walls lined with glowing consoles and holographic displays. The resistance fighters quickly subdued the technicians, securing the area. "Rain, we're in," Elias said into the comms. "What's next?" "Patch me into the mainframe," Rain replied. "I'll upload the broadcast message." Liara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "I'll deliver the message." Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Make it count." The broadcast. As the team held the line against waves of enforcers, Liara stood before the broadcast console, her image projected across the Empire. Her voice was strong, her words clear as she exposed Varric's treachery and declared her intent to reclaim the throne. "To all Elorians," she said, her violet eyes blazing with determination, "I am Liara Alarith, rightful heir to the throne. My family was betrayed, my people enslaved by a tyrant who seeks only power. But today, we rise. Together, we will reclaim our freedom and restore justice to our empire." The broadcast cut through Varric's propaganda like a blade, igniting hope across the empire. Resistance cells rallied, and loyalists within the military began to defect. The escape. The team's victory was short-lived as reinforcements swarmed the station. With the broadcast complete, Rain directed them to an escape route. The corridors were a chaotic battlefield, plasma bolts lighting up the darkness. Elias and Liara fought side by side, their movements seamless as they covered each other. Saren led the way, his booming voice urging the team forward. The Corsairs' engines roared to life as they boarded, lifting off just as enemy ships closed in. The escape was narrow, but they managed to jump to hyperspace, leaving Velarin Spire behind. A new dawn. Back at Valthor's Haven, the mood was jubilant. The broadcast had turned the tide, sparking a rebellion that spread like wildfire. For the first time, Liara's people had hope. As the celebrations died down, Elias found Liara on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. "You did it," he said, joining her. Liara turned to him, her expression both proud and contemplative. "We did it, but this is only the beginning." Elias nodded. "Then we'd better be ready for what's next." They stood together, their bond stronger than ever, as the galaxy prepared for the battles to come. Chapter 4. The Throne Reclaimed. The rebellion ignited by Liara's broadcast spread like wildfire. Across the Elorian Empire, loyalists and resistance cells rose against Varric's regime, rallying under the banner of the rightful heir. The once unshakable grip of Varric's forces began to crack as defections and uprisings dismantled his carefully constructed tyranny. At the heart of this rebellion stood Liara, Elias, and their allies at Valthor's Haven. The final battle was inevitable, and the target was clear. The Imperial Palace on Elorian Prime Varric's seat of power. Preparing for the final battle. The war room of Valthor's Haven buzzed with activity as commanders and strategists coordinated the rebellion's forces. A massive holographic map of Elorian Prime dominated the center of the room, displaying troop movements and key targets. Commander Saren stood at the head of the table, his deep voice commanding attention. Varric's forces are concentrated around the palace. He knows this is his last stand, and he's fortified every approach. Liara stepped forward, her presence radiating strength and determination. "We need to strike at the heart. Taking the palace isn't just about defeating Varric, it's about showing the people that the old ways can be restored." Elias crossed his arms, studying the map. "What's the plan? A frontal assault?" Saren shook his head. "Too risky. Varric's anti-air defenses will tear our ships apart before we get close. We need a ground team to infiltrate the palace while the fleet distracts his forces." Liara turned to Elias, her gaze steady. "We'll lead the ground team." Elias raised an eyebrow. "We?" Liara's lips curved into a faint smile. "You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun, did you?" Elias sighed, a grin tugging at his lips. "Fine, but don't do anything reckless, princess." The battle begins. The rebellion's fleet descended on Elorian Prime under cover of darkness, launching a coordinated assault on Varric's defenses. The skies above the capital city blazed with fire as rebel ships clashed with Imperial forces, drawing attention away from the infiltration team. Elias, Liara, and their squad approached the palace through a network of underground tunnels, guided by intel from the resistance. The air was tense, the sound of distant explosions echoing through the dark passageways. As they neared the surface, the team encountered their first obstacle, a heavily guarded checkpoint. Elias signaled for silence, his hand gripping his plasma rifle. "Stay close," he whispered to Liara. "We'll take them out quietly." Liara nodded, her movements precise as she followed Elias. Together, they dispatched the guards with efficiency, their combined skills a testament to the trust they had built. The palace. The Imperial Palace was a sprawling masterpiece of Elorian architecture, its crystalline towers glimmering under the planet's twin moons. But beneath its beauty lay a fortress of advanced security systems and heavily armed guards. The infiltration team moved quickly, disabling defenses and clearing a path to the throne room. As they advanced, the tension grew. Every step brought them closer to Varric and the moment Liara had been waiting for. When they reached the grand doors of the throne room, Elias turned to Liara. "This is it. Are you ready?" Liara's violet eyes burned with determination. "I've been ready for a long time." The final confrontation. The throne room was a cavernous space, its walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting the history of the Elorian Empire. At its center stood Varric, his tall frame clad in ornate armor, his face a mask of cold arrogance. "Liara," he said, his voice dripping with disdain, "I underestimated your resilience. But this ends here." "It does," Liara replied, stepping forward. "Your reign of terror ends tonight." Varric's laughter echoed through the chamber. "And you think this human and his ragtag rebels can stop me? You're more foolish than I thought." Nelias smirked, his rifle trained on Varric. "I've made a career out of proving people like you wrong." Varric raised his hand, and a squad of elite guards emerged from the shadows. The throne room erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed, plasma bolts lighting up the darkened chamber. Liara versus Varric. As the battle raged, Liara faced Varric in a one-on-one duel. He wielded a gleaming energy blade, its edge crackling with lethal power. Liara, armed with a similar weapon, matched his every strike, her movements a blend of precision and grace. "You're weak," Varric sneered, pressing her back. "You were always unworthy of the throne." Liara's jaw tightened, her blade deflecting his with a resounding crack. "And you were always a coward, hiding behind lies and manipulation." The fight was brutal, but Liara's training and determination gave her the edge. With a final, decisive strike, she disarmed Varric, sending his blade skittering across the floor. "It's over," she said, her blade at his throat. Varric glared at her, his arrogance replaced by fear. "Do it," he hissed. "Kill me." Liara hesitated, her blade trembling. But then she lowered it, her voice steady. "You don't deserve the honor of a quick death. You'll stand trial for your crimes, and the people will see the truth." Victory. With Varric captured, the palace fell to the rebellion. The remaining loyalists surrendered, and the people of Elorian Prime poured into the streets, celebrating their newfound freedom. The rebellion had won. In the days that followed, Liara was formally crowned as the rightful ruler of the Elorian Empire. Her speech, broadcast across the galaxy, promised a new era of justice and unity. Elias stood in the crowd, watching as Liara ascended the throne. When she met his gaze, she smiled, a gesture of gratitude and friendship that needed no words. A new beginning. After the coronation, Liara found Elias on the palace balcony, gazing at the stars. She approached quietly, her presence grounding him. "You're not staying, are you?" she asked softly. Elias shook his head. "I'm not the palace type. Besides, the galaxy's a big place. Plenty of people out there who need someone to fight for them." Liara nodded, though her smile was tinged with sadness. "You'll always have a home here, Elias. And you'll always have an ally," he replied. They stood in silence, the weight of their journey lifting as they looked to the future. Though their paths were diverging, the bond they had forged would remain unbreakable, a testament to what they had accomplished together. As Elias departed aboard the Corsair, the Elorian Empire began its journey toward a brighter future, guided by a princess who had reclaimed her destiny and a human who had reminded her of the strength within.